Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Analysing Anfield, your tactics and analytics podcast, courtesy of the Blood Red channel. I'm Josh Williams and I'm joined by David Hughes. Dave, the end of the season is here, mate. How are you feeling?
Emotional, mate. Because I
I
know
suppose
that
you might be glad to see the end of this one.
yeah, from maybe a fan supporting perspective, yeah. But I'm just aware now that we're gonna have to spend the next 3 months predominantly writing about transfer content as opposed to
Yeah.
actual football matches, which
the,
can
the
get a bit
dreaded four
tedious.
pieces, the dreaded four midfielders for United piece.
Yeah, I hope our big bosses aren't listening here, but exactly that, yeah. But I mean, look, it looks like it's going to be a really interesting / exciting end to the campaign on several different fronts potentially. So yeah, bring it on. End of the season, let's do it.
Well, we are going to get to that. I'm going to ask for your predictions actually as to what will happen in the decisive part of the table, but we'll get to that. First, we're going to talk about what has happened in the past few days that we've obviously missed. First of all, Liverpool picked up another trophy, second of the season, another victory at Wembley, another 0-0, and another victory on penalties. I thought it was quite funny actually how much of a mirrored game it was to the Carabao Cup final. I thought it was virtually identical. I suppose Chelsea posed maybe a little bit less of a threat than they did in the Carabao Cup, but generally both teams should have probably found net at least once. But we end up going 120 minutes goalless.
Yeah. I thought they were a little bit better in the first game, the first final. Thought Liverpool were stronger in this second game.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially in the 90 minutes. Thought Chelsea looked a little bit fresher in extra time, which was bound to be the case. They played fewer games, but yeah, very very strange. We did kind of preview it to be quite a tight game, didn't we? When we discussed it in the build up, and that doesn't mean I was expecting what was pretty much a carbon copy of the fixture to happen or to play out, but that's what happened, and thankfully for Liverpool fans from a Liverpool perspective, they've landed on the right side of the result again.
Yeah, I do think over the course of both finals, I think the first one you probably could flip a coin, if anything. It was probably a Chelsea win in terms of the performance, ever so slightly, that is. But then in this game, I do think Liverpool deserve winners, and obviously we get to the penalty shootout, and Liverpool's come out on top again, which is it's really nice because it's the worst way to lose, and part of me does feel a little bit sorry for Chelsea that they've been denied 2 trophies because of a total of 3 missed penalties, I think, which is just brutal, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Especially, the first one, I don't want to keep referring back to the first game, but, the way it went all the way to the goalkeepers, that's just so unfortunate. But again, yeah, they've missed out again this time via penalties, and I'm sure we'll drill into kind of the modern Liverpool side and what they're doing well on that point of view in a second. But I was just laughing to myself, Josh, thinking as you were talking about it's the worst way to lose finals, because Liverpool's record, I don't just mean Klopp era, I mean in general, in cup finals when it comes to penalty shootouts, is ludicrous, really. Like, if you think about it, you've got these two this year. Champions League final was obviously settled. The 2019 was settled in the 90, wasn't it? But the League Cup final 2012 penalty shootout, FA Cup final 2006 penalty shootout, Istanbul, of course, penalty shootout. I mean, it's you'd imagine there'd be a few more swing the other way there, but maybe it's just destiny. It seems to be going the right way for Liverpool when it matters.
Yeah, it's funny actually. It's nice that you've mentioned that. One question I do have for you though is a penalty shootout a lottery, or can you influence this? Because I am a believer, and I'm gradually believing more and more that you can have an influence over this sort of thing. Rafa had an influence on it dating back to Istanbul. he's famously said since that he, throughout his managerial career or whatever, any penalties that he watched on TV, he would make a note of, and he got to a point where he filed them all in a database. God knows what it looked like, probably Excel and things like that.
Yeah.
But he reckons that when Liverpool were in that Istanbul final, the only player who he didn't have data on regarding the penalties was John Dal Thomason, and he scored, I think, funnily enough. But in terms of this, the modern day, we obviously have a lot more data, and Liverpool seem to be putting into use. And it's not just data that Liverpool are putting into use either. It's like just the general preparation around the routine.
Yeah. I saw numerous things since the game. There was an interesting thread on Twitter that we may come on to.
Did you see that thread? Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. It's we should probably background it for people who maybe didn't see it. And feel free to fill in any gaps here, Josh, on my part. But it was basically detailing the different approaches between Klopp and Tuchel, almost step by step, really, showing how quickly Klopp was quite prepared into how he was, what order the penalties were going to be. He was already kind of discussing 1v1 with players specific instructions, whilst Tuchel was still basically formulating his lineup of penalty takers, and it just gave Liverpool a little bit more downtime, a little bit more time to relax and think about what was to come. Whereas it was still a little bit more frantic on the Chelsea side of things, which could have quite easily played a part, couldn't it?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting, the different approaches between the two coaches. I like the way Klopp, asked each individual taker in an intimate way with his arm around the player, just those two people in the conversation, and he got it over and done with very, very quickly, and basically give the players time to come to terms with the fact that they're taking a penalty, when it's going to be. And I think on the back of Euro 11,
Yeah.
Liverpool have started picking their designated spot of where they're going to shoot the previous day. So they've got like a full, 24 hours, whatever. They know exactly where they're going. Which I think in the past, maybe that will have been a bit more of a decision on the spot, really. Whereas Tuchel, kind of, I think by the time Klopp had finished his selection and got his players into a huddle, and then did a big speech and things like that, I don't think Tuchel had spoke to a single player by that point.
I think he still had them in the huddle, didn't he? Still with his pen and paper, putting the order in place.
Yeah, well, I think on the back of that, he then got them into a huddle, didn't he? And almost picked each taker in the huddle as part of a group. And I think naturally, if you're not keen on taking a penalty, you're probably less likely to say it in front of the group, aren't you? And I don't know about you, I did get a bit of a vibe, just generally, that Mason Mount was not particularly keen to take one. Not against the player, but he's lost 5 finals in a row now at Wembley, and I think he's missed 1 or 2 pens. I'm not sure, and he obviously missed a decisive penalty in this game. But just all those little elements do suggest that okay, there's an element of luck in there, but you can really minimise that if you put the effort in.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, that's what I would say. You asked me at the start of the segment, do I think it's a lottery? To an extent, I do, yeah. Dependent, especially as well, on teams involved. If you put kind of 2 mid-table teams in a penalty shootout who don't really do much of that kind of finer detail work, then yeah, I do expect it to be a lottery. And how often have you talked about former professionals talking themselves about being picked for a penalty and deciding as they walk into the penalty spot which way they're going to go and sticking to it? It's all a very kind of individual process. But, Liverpool, as we talked about with Euro 11 now and on previous episodes, they've obviously invested time into that. I thought it was quite telling. And, maybe Klopp was just saying this for to protect the player. I don't believe he was. Obviously, Klopp said afterwards that the reason Mane missed was partly down to him. He told them to go the other way because he believed that the keeper, Mendy, knew which way he was going to go. So he's almost influenced that decision. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that shows that it's almost a choice as a collective. It's not just a player picking up the ball and deciding which way he's going to go, and the team having no idea. It seems more like it's a decision that they make as a group. Both the player and the staff about which way to go, which again does hint at the fact that there is that extra element of research and planning that goes into it, and it's such small margins. It makes a difference.
Yeah, I don't know about you, mate, but I'm always very surprised by how few players go straight down the middle. I always think I think maybe less so in the amateur game, but in the professional game, so many keepers dive. I'm not sure what the data is on that. There's a piece there actually that I've got saved that I'm meaning to read regarding that sort of thing. But I always feel like it's a really effective penalty. I'm not sure any of Liverpool's shots went down the middle this time around.
The only thing with it, I agree, but the only thing is, I think there's just that fear of being made to look a little bit stupid, I guess. Or I've seen it a few times where a player's gone down the middle and that's been saved with the feet, even if they've made a dive. Where I guess if you do find the bottom corner, or if you've got the ability to top corner, then it should, in theory, be almost unsavable. Although I know it's easier said than done. So I guess that's it. But you are right. 9 times out of 10, when you see a penalty go down the middle, or you see a Panenka or something, it tends to be like a goal almost every time. Benzema obviously did it, didn't he? When was it? Oh, against Man City, wasn't it? In the Champions League semi-final.
Yeah.
Is that right?
First leg.
But here's one for you, Josh, on that discussion. Then it is the problem that obviously even we're talking about Liverpool's attention to detail on this, but even if it's a team like Chelsea, we use Chelsea as the example, they still would have watched Liverpool's penalty takers, I assume, going up ahead of that final. And if a player's done that once or twice, is the keeper thinking, well, I'm just going to gamble on staying down the middle?
Yeah, potentially. I must say it's not a tactic or a ploy that I would use unless it was a big penalty that I kind of had to score. I always think the big penalties, like in a shootout or maybe to decide a game late in the match or whatever, I always think in them moments, I would find myself saying, go straight down the middle. I'm not really sure why, but obviously you've got to make sure you can't just, there's so much data now available on these players that you kind of know where the player's going to go if he goes down the middle every time. Funnily enough, though, actually on the back of the penalties, obviously we look at expected goals a fair bit on this show. You can kind of do that sort of thing with penalties based on where the penalty ends up in terms of placement in the goal. And there's a Twitter account that I follow for a while, been around for a while, called Penalty Kickstat, and it just looks at the expected goals attached to each penalty in terms of where the penalty was placed in the goal. So for a bit of perspective on that, Liverpool's best penalty on the day was apparently Diogo Jota. If you can remember, he went to Mendy's left and he hit it relatively high towards the top corner. And according to the penalty kickstats model, that penalty is scored 99% of the time. So that's virtually guaranteed. Milner's was 95%. Firmino's was 89%. Thiago's was 90%. All really, really good penalties. For a bit of perspective again, Chelsea's best was Reece James, and that was just 80%. So on the back of the penalties that we took, we had an expected goals, if you like, of 6.2. Liverpool obviously scored 6. And Chelsea's expected goals from their penalties was just 4.5. So again, on top of Klopp's preparation, on top of players knowing maybe 24 hours in advance exactly where they're going to go, and on top of the actual placement of the penalties, you kind of look at that and think to yourself, a fair bit would have had to go wrong really for Liverpool to lose that penalty shootout.
Yeah, and I think that what you've just explained there gives a little bit of a deeper level of it, I guess. But you could even just look at it from a really basic point of view, and look at the records. Liverpool took over those 2 finals. They took, what was it? 16 penalties, 17 penalties. from a variety of players, with different strengths and weaknesses. Not all of them are, elite finishers by any stretch. I mean, there was a goalkeeper in there. I think that one's a little bit, it probably is the most fortunate one because it's unlikely that he would have been practicing penalties. But the wider
It was a good pen though, wasn't it?
No, it was a very good pen, but I put that down to his own composure as opposed to maybe something that from the training pitch. But yeah, 17 penalties, scored 16 of them. I think if you studied, it's maybe not something we'd go and look at because it'd take a lot of time. But I'm sure if someone, wanted to pass some time and look into this, it'd be interesting to see how many teams involved in penalty shootouts. Their last 17 penalties, how many they actually converted. Because I think the conversion rate would be a lot smaller than 16. I'd be expecting to be somewhere closer to 10, 11, which, as I said, maybe someone will go away and have a look at that, but that'll be a testament to what Liverpool have been doing.
Yeah. Just for a little bit more context, the worst penalty of everyone's on the day was Sadio Mane. 60% of the time, Mane's effort was scored based on where it was placed. And obviously Mane missed. So, yeah, another trophy for Liverpool, another nice win. And we moved on to, I suppose, the one competition that is not in our hands at the minute, and that is the Premier League. And Jurgen Klopp played a team of second strings, total rotation from front to back, apart from Alisson Becker maybe. And you sent me a message during the game, Dave. You seemed to be impressed with what you saw.
Yeah, and I should add that this wasn't at the end of the game or even when Liverpool took the lead. The game was level at this point. I think I messaged you just before the second goal, didn't I? Actually, Liverpool's second.
As the phone vibrated, Liverpool scored. Funnily enough.
Right, okay. I mean,
so you should do that more often, mate.
Yeah. Well, the irony was I was clearly watching it on delay because you replied saying something like "good timing." I was like,
"Oh no way!"
And then I went, "Oh no, they're going to score." Yeah, that'll be it. But, what I was really impressed about, to be honest, was just the performance. I know Southampton scored, but I thought it was a really dominant display, which, considering it was a second string, is quite remarkable. And it just reminded me, we've spoken about this before, but not recently. It just reminded me that, when players go into this Liverpool side, it's almost as if they adapt their skill set and mold them into the roles of what's needed in that position, as opposed to maybe going in with their own, what they bring and having to kind of make it work on the pitch. They just seem to be able to adjust into those 1 to 11 positions so that there's no actual change in the dynamic of how Liverpool play, which I guess is a benefit of having years under the same regime and drilling the same kind of structure, tactics, and just being perfectly aligned.
Well, I think that's one of the beauties of how Liverpool have recruited. If you're building a squad over the course of like 10 windows or whatever, as opposed compared to, say, for example, Manchester City, who were in a bit more of a rush to get depth so that they can just clean up in terms of trophies. Liverpool have been able to get basically 2 clones for every position, really. Sometimes you would have a left back who is attacking and a left back who's a bit more defensive or something like that, just 2 different options. If you look at what City have got in certain areas, they've got loads of nice options in attacking areas, but some of them are left-footed, some of them are right-footed, some of them are threats and behind, some of them are playmakers, and you just got all different types of players, really, all different types of profiles to use. And I think that you find that generally with Chelsea as well. Chelsea have got, Ziyech, very different to Pulisic, who's very different to Mount, who's very different to Werner. Whereas Liverpool do have 2 clones across the board in different positions. And it has allowed Liverpool to build over time and to get to a point now where, regardless of who's playing, the system remains totally unchanged for the most part. I think the one difference maybe is potentially Trent. We don't really have another player who does what Trent does. Gomez has done okay little impressions lately. I think a few weeks back he registered a goal, an assist on the back of a cross, which was decent. But generally Gomez is very different to Trent. But apart from that, Liverpool have 2 clones across the board, and it allows Liverpool to just play in exactly the same way from week to week, regardless of who's playing. And this was another one of those top performances, really, where I said to you, didn't I, on the text, if this was like a team of shadows, you would not think that Van Dijk, Fabinho, Trent, Robertson, Mane, Salah, Diaz were all benched, or were all, some of them not even in the squad.
Yeah. And I think another consequence of that, well, I say consequence, another benefit is the better term, is, if you think about the amount of fixtures that Liverpool have had to play this season, rotation has been inevitable, and it does kind of feel like that is low key being a big thing for Liverpool this season, that maybe more hasn't been made of, that they have been rotating a lot, from game to game because of how many fixtures they've got. And the initial assumption is, well, that they're not struggling because they've got, really good players now, loads of squad depth. But I think the reality is, if you look at that 11 yesterday, Josh, I don't think anywhere else that's an 11 that is a title chasing side. There is quality in there. I'm not trying to put any of those players down, but as an 11, to me, it looked like it'd be closer to maybe like a top 6 side. But because of the way that the Klopp has kind of built this team, and the structure and the way everything's so well rehearsed tactically now, these players can go in and be, really strong and compete like a team that's pushing for the title. And I also think that throughout the season, these rotations have been able to be made without any huge drop off, because, say a centre back's going in with, who's a good example here, say Henderson playing as 6 instead of Fabinho, or we'll use Milner, going in there, and it doesn't mean that they have to adapt their game because they've got a different player in that place. They know that the actual team philosophy and how they go forward, how they move the ball out, is going to be exactly the same as it is week by week, no matter who's there. I just think that makes the need to rotate a much easier task.
Yeah, it's about that consistency, isn't it? And, every player doing virtually the same thing from week to week without too many changes. There's obviously some downsides to sticking with the same formation every week, because you can't, the opponents almost know what to expect. But it doesn't seem to hinder Liverpool whatsoever. It doesn't seem to cause any, Liverpool don't seem easy to predict, don't seem easy to analyse by any means. And I think you've got some coaches out there, and Rodgers always comes to mind when I think of this, who are just kind of obsessed with changing formation from week to week, almost because they think the emphasis is on themselves to win the game through tactical adjustments. Whereas usually when you're doing that, it doesn't take too long for things to kind of become very ambiguous and muddled into one big ball of, things that are unclear, basically, a way that is unclear. Sometimes you counter-attack and sometimes you're dominant. And I don't know. I think Liverpool are very, very difficult to analyse in terms of being so multifaceted and things like that, but also at the same time, the players who form part of the team seem to know exactly what to expect every time they play. And it just allows Liverpool to dominate regardless of who's playing. If you look at the numbers attached to the game, Liverpool should have kept a clean sheet in this game. They posted an XG of 1.5, which is not bad. And Southampton posted an XG of 0.1, which is awful. And that comes from a total of just 4 shots. Liverpool 24 shots. Liverpool 24 shots. That's Liverpool B team against Southampton's A team. I mean, it doesn't bode well, does it, for the Premier League? But I think it's also a massive nod towards Liverpool's depth, because earlier in the season we faced AC Milan, the likely winners of Serie A, by the way. Liverpool's B team away from home, and in that game we posted 22 shots and Milan posted 8. So again, just another testament to Klopp's work, really.
Yeah, it goes back to the point I was making earlier. That it's for me, it's not just about strength and depth. It's just about, because everything's so aligned. That consistency makes it easier for these players to come in and know exactly what the roles are and what to do. And Yeah, it was such a dominating display. Against I know Southampton are struggling. That they don't look good at all. It'll be interesting to see what happens with them in the summer, because they look really poor. But I think on another night, or if another team goes there, they could have caused them problems, and I think they would have been boosted seeing the starting 11, and that could have maybe given them some emphasis to go and do something in the game. And Hazelhuten's comments before the match, when he was talking about it being like a Champions League final, or I do believe they did want to win the game. They could not cope with Liverpool. They couldn't get out their own half. They couldn't pass it. I thought Liverpool's pressing without the ball was phenomenal.
I did.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's a trait of Liverpool's game anyway, but just specifically, on Tuesday night, I just thought it was, phenomenal. Just Southampton could not cope with it at all. And I know that Matip's goal, there was some talk of it being quite fortunate, but as you've just said, Josh, 20 odd shots they had. I think that kind of dominance in terms of shooting, you make your own luck, don't you?
Yeah, that's it. Players like Curtis Jones, and then specifically Minamino and Harvey Elliott coming in. Neither of them have really played at all in about a month, I think. But they just come in, look sharp and fresh as ever, ready to deliver. Not upset at all at the fact that they haven't been playing. Minamino scores, and on the back of the FA Cup talk that we've just had, Minamino interestingly ends the season top scorer in the Carabao Cup, top scorer in the FA Cup. It's incredible the way Klopp gets the best out of these players. It does remind me that one coach. I mean, a lot of Liverpool fans maybe aren't going to want to hear this, but one coach who always seemed to be able to do this was Ferguson. A few years back, whoever played for United, it just seemed to be he would deliver, he would perform to a certain standard, whether it was Raphael, whether it was Darren Fletcher, it could be anybody, Federico Makeda, just anybody he would perform to the
title deciding goal, didn't he, against Villa?
Yeah. I always remember that goal. He was tipped as the next Ronaldo on the back of that, and we never saw him again.
Yeah.
But just this ability to just harvest everything from your players is just such a gift that Klopp seems to have. But one small, I don't even know if it's a negative, but I suppose it's a little bit of writing on the wall that Ox still didn't get a single minute, didn't even come on as a substitute. It does feel with him, and I think this is a massive negative from himself, for him, is I think he's arguably the one player who Klopp could not get the most from. And when you've spent your career working under Arsene Wenger and Jurgen Klopp, and you haven't really came particularly close at any point to fulfilling your potential, apart from a streak of form before a big injury, which he was unlucky with. It's always going to be what could have been with Ox, which is a sad one.
It is, and he's always felt like he's still got time. But I mean, the reality is this summer he turns 29. He's well and truly in his prime years, and if anything, probably going to be start heading towards coming out of them. So yeah, I think that'll always be a problem, that he didn't quite hit the potential that was expected from him. I think he was unlucky with the injury, as you said, but I also think there's been a lot of time passed since then, and who knows, maybe. I think he's definitely going to move on, isn't he, in the summer? And maybe if he goes to another club where he can play a bigger role, get a consistent run in the team without pressure of really good players around you, constant rotation, and then maybe he still goes on to be a good player. But the problem for me, Josh, and I don't know if you'd agree, is kind of physical makeup, and what his strengths are quite heavily reliant on the physical aspects of his game, and they're probably going to dwindle eventually, aren't they? Or sooner than maybe footballing ability, and that could be a bigger problem for them.
Yeah, Saints are actually one of the teams I'd put him in, to be honest, in terms of his qualities and what he's good at, whether he could potentially thrive. I also think Leeds would be a good team for him in terms of what he's good at. But it'll be interested to see what happens there with him, because obviously he's not part of it at the minute. But the final day, mate, is approaching, so let's go through it. We'll start with relegation. Who is getting relegated? Obviously, Norwich are down, Watford are down.
Such a
Who else are you
subject, this
going
one,
with? Touchy one.
I mean, by the time this show comes out, there might maybe people watching, listening post Thursday night fixtures, which could be a very decisive day. Everton are at home to Crystal Palace, and Burnley are playing. Who are Burnley playing? Can we check that now?
Yeah, let's have a look. Burnley are playing
Villa.
Villa, yeah.
Yeah, so and that's at Villa Park. So
And then they've got Newcastle final day.
yeah, but Newcastle's a tough one. I suppose the benefit for them is they're at home. But Newcastle are just, Liverpool the only team who can get the better of them over the last few months. So
They look superb, by the way, Newcastle against Arsenal during the week.
Yeah, they really were. You can tell that the club's buzzing at the moment. So that's not an easy game. To answer your question, Josh, I think if I try and be objective, and I promise I am being objective, I think Everton should probably get the better of Palace, because I don't know if did you manage to watch the Brentford game at all on Sunday?
I saw the highlights, but I know that things obviously changed on the back of the red card.
Yeah, well, they started really strongly, scored. I think, they had about 5 shots, accumulated of XG of like nearly 1.5 in the first 15 minutes, which, that's pretty much like their season average, such as how poor they've been. So it looked like they were just going to blow them away, and that would have been it sort of, but obviously lose the game, go down to 9. So they're still in it, but I think if they start like that again against Palace, they should be all right. So it's between Burnley and Leeds, and a part of me, Josh, although Leeds look really poor, I've got a feeling it might be Burnley. I think they haven't got a proper margin in place, have they? And I just think they could get sucked into it.
Yeah, I think you can flip a coin between them two, if I'm honest. Really difficult to predict. Leeds have got Brentford away, and I think they might lose that. But if they lose that, then it means Burnley need a point from Villa and Newcastle. They absolutely could get a point, but I just don't know.
What I would say, if people listen to this now and it's post an Everton defeat or even not an Everton win, then I suddenly think Everton become really kind of favourites to go, because they've got Arsenal.
Who have Everton got final day again?
Arsenal away.
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal's heads are down though at the minute. The Champions League gone. Spurs are not gonna fall at Norwich. It's just not. So I think Arsenal could actually, if Everton are more up for it, if Everton put it to them like they have been lately, specifically at home, I think Arsenal could crumble a little bit actually. But yeah, if I was to put money on this, I would probably go for Leeds. I don't know. It's tough,
Yeah.
It's tough one.
Is there any that can we avoid the obvious Everton stuff? Is there either of Burnley or Leeds that you prefer to go?
I'd rather Burnley go. Yeah, pretty comfortably as well.
Yeah.
I like something about Leeds that I don't mind, and I like the playing style. I'm interested to see how Jesse Marsh does with a full season. And Burnley have been in the league for a few years, and we know what Burnley are about, don't we?
Yeah. Then again, though, mate, you might be able to get Rafinha on a cheap deal if Leeds go.
Yeah. I saw the piece on the Athletic during the week saying apparently in their last game, Rafinha was kind of at the end of the game. He was kind of looking around as though it was his last visit to Ellen Road in a way. But Barcelona, let's sit for him, aren't they? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah.
In terms of fourth, I assume you know what's going to happen there.
Yeah, but is it a good, quick opportunity just to discuss how that one's panned out? Because what's your view? I am actually really interested to get your view on how it's panned out the last couple of weeks with Arsenal and Tottenham.
I think Spurs are the better team.
Mm.
I think Spurs have got better individuals. I think Spurs have got a better coach. And certainly from a Liverpool perspective, Spurs were a far trickier prospect to beat than Arsenal were. So I think, all things considered, the right thing is happening. But I think from an Arsenal perspective, maybe they get over the line if Tierney and Partey remain fit. But I think on the back of them not remaining fit, and they suffered a few injuries and then brought in a few players who were maybe second strings, maybe Arsenal are in a position at the minute to be able to do that and keep going as normal. Maybe like a team like Liverpool. And for a few years, it has felt like Arsenal just a mentally fragile team at times. They are prone to crumbling, aren't they? And Roy Keane hates them, doesn't he, for reasons associated with that. And they're the opposite of a Roy Keane team, really, aren't they? So I'm not that surprised. And looking at Spurs' numbers, actually, under Conte, second half of the season, underlying numbers, that is, like expected goals and goal difference and things like that, I am really intrigued as to how they will get on next season, because I think they could be, I think they could leapfrog Chelsea next season, Spurs. I'm not sure how close he would get them to Liverpool and City, but if he gets a good window from Daniel Levy, I'm really intrigued to see what he can do with that team.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you've said. While we were chatting, I was just wondering, because obviously Arsenal being called bottlers now, but I know it was a little bit different to, maybe start of April, but I'm having a look at the start of the month now, and there was only 2 points between the two, Arsenal and Tottenham, really, same number of games going into May. And you think, is it really bottling it? If that's overturned, it's not as if it's a huge points difference, is it really?
No, I think for me, maybe that tag is stemming from the nature of the loss to Newcastle, because they got absolutely battered. They got fully bullied. Lost every duel, and if you look at that game and think one of them teams is playing for a spot in the Champions League next season, you would not have thought it was Arsenal.
Potentially you're right, but I agree with Spurs. The only maybe thing that could change that is Conte just comes out with some very bizarre statements that makes me think he wants to leave. I'm not saying he does, but he does say some bizarre things that you're like, what is the message you're trying to put out there? But I think he'll have another year in him at least.
Yeah, I agree. I hope he stays just to see what he does, because I rate him so highly. And I rate Kane so highly. I rate Son so highly. And they play virtually every week for them. So if you can build something around them, like they tried to get Diaz. Imagine they had the front three of Diaz, Kane, Son. That could have been serious issues for the rest of the league. Another little note before we go to the winners: who gets Conference League? Because 7th is currently West Ham. They are on 56 points. And 6th is Manchester United, 2 points ahead. United final day have Palace. And West Ham final day have, I think it's Brighton. Do you think there's any prospect there of West Ham leapfrogging United? They have got a better goal difference. So if United draw, West Ham win, West Ham would get it.
Well, that's
would get
literally
what,
that's literally what I was about to say to you. I was like, United actually need to go and win that game, and they're going to Palace away, last game of the season. I imagine they'll be right up for it. United won't be up for it at all. The manager.
If they get in the Conference League, oh my word, that's going to be hilarious, isn't it?
Mate, it could happen. It genuinely it could happen. Ragnick's obviously had enough. He can't wait to go. There's players there who know they won't be there under the new regime. They've down tools weeks ago. I went to watch United against Chelsea. Actually, watched them live a few weeks ago, and Josh, honestly, I couldn't believe how bad they were. I just couldn't. It was a 1-1. It was a 1-1 draw, so it wasn't even a bad result. But the performance, I was like, who is this team? It was literally just hitting it long to Ronaldo. Open heel, it'll stick with him, and he can kind of get runners off. I'm so bad. Obviously, they've been smashed by Brighton 4-0. Terrible results for the team who'd scored, 12 home league goals all season. So wouldn't surprise me if you lose that, and West Ham can get the result. Then yeah, it'll be quite funny to see them go in that Conference League.
Yeah, it will. I hope it happens, and I actually don't think Man United will beat Palace, but I'm not sure West Ham will beat Brighton. Brighton away is a tough game. I know sometimes Brighton's results don't suggest as much, but Brighton are a good team, and so I wouldn't be surprised if both of those sides drop points. But I think on the back of the season that they've had, I think United deserve to be in that Conference League, to be honest, next season, because they have been a mess, mate, honestly. West Ham have had a far better season than them, but they've had, obviously, other things on the mind in terms of the Europa League. And then, the top of the table, what happens?
I go first, and maybe then you take over and give us your thoughts. But I don't know. Like, all logic to me says, City win that game. But, and this is purely just looking at it from an emotional perspective, and I'm talking about a wider footballing perspective rather than my own emotions. Of course, I'm not gonna paint a picture that isn't true, but something just wouldn't surprise me if there's another twist in this tale, because Liverpool have done everything right in terms of putting that pressure on City. It has been relentless, the pressure they've been putting on them. Even coming getting away, putting the second string out, still getting the win yesterday. Like, all everybody is talking about is, will City beat Villa? That's all they need to do. But nobody is even considering that Liverpool have got to win their game, because it almost feels inevitable that they will. It feels like this Liverpool side won't fall in that regard. They will win their final game. So, but will City? That's the bigger question. I don't think there's any bias in there. I think it's understandable why people are thinking like that. So, my head says this one gets settled fairly straightforward, with City blowing Villa away and becoming champions. But there is this kind of emotional aspect to it that thinks there might just be another twist in this, and it could be one of those not Aguero-esque kind of end to the season, but quite a dramatic finale.
I agree, really. I think if you was a screenwriter, a script writer, you would probably write it so that on the final day of the season, City have to go and beat a team managed by Steven Gerrard. It's just hilarious how this has worked out, really. Phil Coutinho is obviously playing there. Danny Ings is playing there. So it's gonna be absolute Barclays Premier League if something happens here, but I don't think it will, if I'm honest. According to 538, City are 82% on to win the league. Liverpool have an outside chance of 18%. That something will potentially go wrong. One element of hope maybe that you could throw in there if listeners want this is earlier in the season when Villa faced City. City did not deserve to win that game. They won 2-1. The expected goals on the day was 0.9 for Villa, 0.9 for City. So it was very much a split down the middle. City were not at their usual level. That maybe was their portion of the season where they were falling off a little bit, and maybe Villa were still benefiting from a bit of bounce when it comes to Gerrard. But 0.9 is not good for City in terms of their season as a whole. All competitions, this is they posted 0.7 against Chelsea, 0.8 against Atletico Madrid, 0.8 against Brentford, and then Villa. So their fourth worst attacking performance really came against Villa this season. Obviously, Gerrard has something to play for here. He's very, very interested in this game. It's not one of those knocking bets. So I suppose there's a glimmer of hope there. But, the nature of this pod, we try not to be cheerleaders, do we? And we try to just say things as they are, and this is very, very unrealistic. But there's something there. There's something there more than a few years back. I think the last game of the season was against Brighton, and they ended up winning like 4-1 or something like that. I think there's a bit more hope for this one. Would have been nice if it was away. The fact that it's at home and City are having a week to prepare. Villa play on Thursday night is not great, but I suppose you never know.
Yeah, look, there is more hope, and you can take comfort in that City are going to come up against a highly motivated team. I think the problem is, because we talked about this, from a Liverpool perspective, even a highly motivated team can't stop Liverpool or Man City when they're at the very best. So the hope is that maybe City aren't at the best. Nerves get the better of them. I think they will be very nervous for this game because they've got nothing else. They haven't won another trophy, have they? It's this or nothing for them this year. And to win nothing would be a disaster for Man City, an absolute disaster. So I think there'll be a lot of pressure on them to win. And maybe that could impact things, because it doesn't matter how good you are, pressure's pressure, and it can take its toll even on the best players. But I take it you've got absolutely no concerns about Liverpool's game.
No, I feel confident about Liverpool's game. It's at Anfield. I watched Wolves against City the other day, funnily enough, and they were just wide open.
Josh, just quickly, was that game in the last kind of final day shootout? Did Liverpool also play Wolves that day?
Yeah. I think we won that game at the time. Something like that, yeah. I can't remember, to be honest, but that's funny actually that you mentioned that. So I don't think Liverpool will slip up, but City, just with the Gerrard factor, maybe, I don't know what it is. Coutinho can do things in moments. He's been described as a moments player in the past, and Danny Ings is quite clinical on his day. He can take a chance when he gets it. So it's going to be really interesting to see if something can happen. The big thing for me is the first goal. When City don't score first, it's just nowhere near the same. West Ham scored first against them the other day. They end up drawing 2-2. That first goal is massive to how they play, how they control the game. So if Villa can just do something by scoring first, I will have serious hope. But it's that first goal, you just never know, really. But it's one to watch, and it's one for us to maybe analyse next week. Maybe, we'll see what happens ahead of the Champions League final, which Liverpool will have to look forward to regardless of what happens in the Premier League. So, yeah, the good times anyway, still rolling regardless of what happens on Sunday, but hopefully things go a bit mad. Dave, thanks for joining us, mate, and thanks for joining us throughout the season. It's been a joy to have you on.
Thank you, mate. Good luck Sunday, I guess. And
same to yourself.
Yeah. Look, I'm open. It's all sorted by Thursday night.
Yeah,
but we'll see, mate. But yeah, no, thank you and cheers for tuning in, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we will be back next week. So up the Reds. Hopefully we end up as Premier League winners, but we'll see. See you next week.